Moving on to our panel discussion, which is going to be facilitated by Raylene Castle. So I'd like to bring our panel members up to the stage as I read out a little bio on each of our panellists. So first up, we've got Jolie Hodson, MNZM Ngā Puhi, kia ora. Jolie is CEO and an Executive Director of Spark New Zealand. Her appointment to CEO in July 2019 followed a substantial career within Spark, leading different areas of the operating business over a 6-year period. Jolie is a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion, digital equity, and the role of technology, enabling Aotearoa's transition to a low-carbon economy. She is a member of Global Women, Champions for Change, and a founder of On Being Bold, and is passionate about mentoring women in business. In 2022, Jolie became the convener of the Climate Leaders Coalition, uniting New Zealand businesses that account for 32% of the country's GDP to raise the bar on business leadership on climate action. In 2016, she was awarded CFO of the Year, and in 2022 awarded CEO of the Year at the Deloitte Top 200 Business Awards. Can you please put your hands together for Jolie Hodson? Dame Therese Walsh is also joining us this morning as Chair of Air New Zealand, Chair of ASB, Chair of Chapter 0 NZ, and Director of Antarctica New Zealand and On Being Bold. She was previously Chair of TVNZ, Pro-Chancellor of Victoria University Wellington, a Director of NZX, Contact Energy New Zealand Cricket and Save the Children, Trustee of the Wellington Regional Stadium, Head of New Zealand for the ICC Cricket World Cup 2015, Chief Operating Officer for Rugby New Zealand 2011, CFO at the New Zealand Rugby Union, part of the team that won the Rugby World Cup hosting rights, and was earlier an auditor at KPMG. Can you please put your hands together for Dame Therese Walsh? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jenny May, thank you. Thank you, ladies. It's really lovely to see you. And for us in the room, I think to have two of New Zealand's leading leaders, but also two wahine that, for me, are always willing to reach out, always willing to be supportive and always willing to be there for an ear when I've got a question or a challenge, is something that I'm fortunate to be able to share with you all this morning. So I think that's important, so thank you. We are going to wander through some leadership questions. It is going to be a conversation, and then we'll make sure that we leave some time for questions at the end. So if everyone can start thinking about those questions, because you do have two of New Zealand's top leaders here today. So if I can start by asking you a question. So obviously you both lead your organisations in different ways. What does leadership mean to you?
Kia ora koutou, everyone. When I think about leadership, when you stand back and look at it holistic level, ultimately it's about how do you navigate change and how do you help your people and your organisation navigate change. And that starts with creating a purpose, ensuring you have the right environment that people can thrive. But the only thing is certain, we heard Tom talk about the change that they've experienced, and I'm sure other speakers throughout the last day or so will have done that too. So it's about making sure that you're able to adapt. And I think in any organisation, no matter whether that's sport or business, that's really relevant. And if I think about where we were 10 years ago as an organisation as to where we are now, if we hadn't changed, we'd no longer be relevant. So that affects a lot of things that you do, both your customers, the things you do with your people. So ensuring that leadership starts with that, how do I help my people, how do I help lead them through that change, and how do I set a vision that they can get behind and support them with the capability to do that?
Yeah, look, Jolie just summed that up really well, and that's exactly how she leads. I think the other thing is, having been on boards or chaired a number of boards in New Zealand, I get the privilege of working with lots of different CEOs. They all have one thing in common: they're very stubborn, in my experience, which is good, because why do they need to be stubborn? Because it goes to the vision part. I think to be a really successful CEO or leader, you have to have a vision. You have to be going to a place. Could be in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, whatever it is. But you have to be really clear about that vision and sell it to everybody else and get them all in the waka with you as you go towards that vision. The other thing that, to me, makes people stand out from other people is the way you are. Just the way you are as a person and as a human being, and you have to exude culture and values, because the culture and values that you exude will be shared ultimately by everyone in the organisation. That's your job, actually, and I look at Jolie as someone who exudes values and culture, having worked with her for a long time, and there are many people in this room who do as well, and to me that's what makes people stand apart. You're driving at a vision, you are quite dogmatic about it, but you have amazing values and you can adjust to change.
So just to evolve that, so how do you go about instilling a mindset of change within your organisation?
Look, I think it's a really interesting, and I think it's something you have to invest in. It's not something that just happens. There is a muscle memory to change too, and I think part of it as leaders is to be able to bring a perspective that looks beyond the walls of your organisation, what is happening in the world around you. Because one of the things about change is making sure you're actually looking in the mirror to understand what needs to happen. The other thing is then about investing in and making sure that you're helping to build the skills in your people. And so I'm a leader of an organisation, but I have many leaders within my organisation. So how am I helping them and investing in that and putting as much money into that as I might do into something I put into the marketplace? Because ultimately it is people who change what happens in an organisation. It's not the infrastructure I own, it's not the technology's an enabler, but it's the culture, and that's why when I think about sort of 3 key enablers on our strategy, one of those is innovation culture. So it's investment and it's thinking about how you help people stay current and deal with the ambiguity that is around us, not only in our business. You think about everything that's happening in the world right now. We're probably really dealing with it at a pace that we've never had to deal with in the past. So how do you help people to work through that? And to me, it's about investing in them.
And I think just building on that theme, curiosity. So if I just go into the boardroom as opposed to being the CEO or an executive for a minute, in the boardroom, it's really healthy to have some directors who are new. And those directors act like, you know when you have a 2 or 3-year-old child and they say why all the time, just why? That's what new directors do.
Apparently, we got yesterday the answer is ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, yeah.
Basically, you just can feed them and they just
and
voice
do you know
activate
what?
it.
I think 2-year-olds can use ChatGPT better than most people in this room. Actually, it's like the young people coming through with technology is amazing, but you have to be curious. That's the key thing. Like actually, if the tone at the board level is not curious, and we're not saying why do we exist? What is our purpose? Why are we here? Why are you even doing that, Jolie? Like, if you don't have that tone of curiosity and getting in other views, then the CEO won't be nurtured to be as curious as they want to be, and all the leadership team. And when in the organisations I chair, I'm always bringing in external speakers, and I'm always taking the board out of the boardroom. I'm really big on being out of the boardroom. The boardroom is a small room with 4 walls. You don't get a lot going on there except for the conversation between the directors. Get out, get about, get with externals, get with future thinkers, get with customers, get with your whānau within the organisation and talk to people. You will learn, and that curiosity can be fuelled. And the other thing is, I think you always have to be doing something in the organisation that you're uncomfortable with. There has to be something going on that you're uncomfortable with. If everything is comfortable, no good will come from that. So if I take Air New Zealand as an example, during COVID, when we shut down the airline, essentially, the CEO came up with this radical idea to install agile work practices. Now, Air New Zealand's got like 11,000 staff, and you think about installing agile at a time like that when no other airline in the world has ever done it. That made me deeply uncomfortable as chair of the board, but the CEO was very clear about it, and we talked a lot about it, and he's implemented it, him and the leadership team and the entire leadership squad, and we're now really reaping the benefits of it. So always doing something that makes you uncomfortable, I think, is really important to look forward.
So just building on that, we have a lot, basically half the room here are CEOs and half of them are chairs. And you talked about that challenge and how the challenge and the but why. Can you just talk about how you build trust in the boardroom between the CEO and the executive and to be able to ask those questions so it's not challenging, it's seen as a positive experience?
Yeah, and look, it's really interesting. The CEO-chair relationship is such a chemistry thing. Like, all human beings, if I went over to this table here and I spent a day each with each of you, I'll probably, get on better with some than others. It's just the nature of human relationships. We all like each other in different ways, and you have different relationships, and chemistry is really important. And when you hire a CEO, you have to look for that chemistry, because you have to have a good connection and relationship and deep trust. I've been on boards where that deep trust does not exist, and it creates a level of dysfunction, even if it's quite silent. And so deep trust is something that is of vital importance to me. And so having those open conversations where you have each other's backs, but you can be challenging. And if I was quote our current Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, he used to always say, you can disagree, but you can't be disagreeable. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. You have to have the challenge. I remember Greg Foran, who's the current CEO of in New Zealand, and myself were at an IOD conference talking about the relationship between CEO and chair, and someone asked, when was the last time you disagreed with each other and you had a bit of a barney? And it was like, well, we don't tend to have barneys. What we tend to do is openly share views the entire time. So as a particular thought evolves, I might say, I think the sky's green today, and he says, well, I think the sky's purple today, and I'm like, well, why do you think it's purple? Why do I think it's green? And you actually talk it through over a period of time and get to the bottom of it, because as long as everyone's got the best interest of the organisation at heart, that's a great conversation to have. So, yeah, building trust is critical.
And from your perspective as a CEO?
I was just going to say, on the other side of that coin, I would totally agree with that trust, because ultimately when you are being bold, trying new things, wanting to bring change to what you do, you need to be able to have an open and robust debate. Actually, one of the things that you want there is people to, probably the person who'd least agree with you, to put those questions into the room to make sure that you have thought through it all. But ultimately, you need people behind you once you've made that decision to move forward, because you're the one that'll front up in front of the media or in front of the market to talk about those things. So making sure that you can have that debate, you feel the backing, that you work on that relationship like you'd work on any other relationship. I don't think it just happens. And to Therese's point, there might be people that you better get along than others, but ultimately it's how you get that whole board working well to bring the perspectives. And I think the chair has a really unique role too in making sure you are thinking about the construct of that board, to make sure you have a whole lot of different life experiences that can actually contribute to the debate.
Because I think just one thing on that is that the chair stands back. Like if you're Jolie, you're the CEO of Spark, every day you go to work for the best interests of Spark, and your chair does too, but your chair, who I know in this case, by the way, she stands back. She's not in it every minute of every day, and sometimes you get a different perspective, and sometimes on the boards I chair, I can see that there's a thing kind of starting to build, or a kind of perception that's not being seen in the organisation. And if I take ASB Bank, I'm not a banker by background, so sometimes I'll just say in the board meeting, everyone stop talking banking, just stop for a minute. Let's just talk about how it is to be a New Zealander. Let's just stop. So, bringing that different view and perspective when you're not buried in it every day should be a really healthy thing if there's trust between CEO and chair.
So question to you both, so how do you go about building that team around your leadership table or your board table? What are you looking for when you build that team?
When I think about instead of building a leadership team, what I'm looking at is different experiences, things, people that will add, not looking for everyone who looks the same as me or has done the same sorts of things, but then thinking about how do you actually create a dynamic, and investing and spending time on us as a high-performing team. And I know that has probably a different connotation in sport, but the reality is for us it's thinking around how do we spend that time, because it can be, you can get to a stage in your career where people don't actually invest in how you can continue to get better, how you better work as a group, and having the people that will have different ideas about how we do things, have different approaches is really important when you're trying to think through complex issues, because otherwise you can end up with the same old answer to the same old problem, and I know Tom mentioned, I think, the definition of insanity before. That's the reality of it. So we've got to be able to bring that together. And then when I think about a board, it's a different set of skills and capability that are required, but making sure as a leader of kind of the management team that I'm encouraging that open environment, trusting access to anything, but equally within limits too within that. So you are okay to push back on things as well if it's done in a constructive way. So it's trying to find the way that you can engage in debate. Everyone's passionate about the business and how we move forward, or the organisation, but we get to a situation where we commit and do that through that engagement across team and board.
And I don't think it's much different on a board. You know, when I'm looking for new directors on boards, you know, you're obviously very cognizant of the skill set, you know, the skill matrix. You look at it, oh, we need someone who's got an accounting background, someone that has an industry background, someone, you know, you go through the list. But what's becoming really important these days is kind of a diversity matrix, which is your thought patterns, the way you think, your background and experiences. It doesn't just mean you're a different gender or a different ethnicity, but actually how you are as a human, because you can have two people that look exactly the same, but they think quite differently. So getting that right is really important. And then I put over the top of that a road trip test. Could I do a road trip with you and not want to stop the car halfway and go, can I please get out and walk the rest of the way to Auckland? That's an important test. I mean, you don't have to be best mates. You just have to be able to enjoy each other's company enough and be constructive and challenge within that, and actually find the humour in it. I've got a couple of board members on one board who they're always countering each other's views. No, that's wrong. It's like this and it's not like that, or whatever. But we actually have fun with that. We're like, come on, serve back. You know, so you've got to have a bit of humour and fun with it, but you've actually got to have a team. And it's important for a board to hang out sometimes, actually, and just get, you know, further down the road trip test and actually know stuff about each other. When we have board dinners, I make everyone go around the table, and everyone hates it when I do it at the beginning, and then they love it by the end. First thing you have to do is we go around the table, you share one thing that's happening to you in your professional world, you know, might be one challenge that you got on the go, and one personal thing. The things that you can learn in one night instead of just chatting to the person next to you are incredible, and the bonds it creates. And you've got to find those kind of opportunities, don't you?
Yeah, I just did something similar with our board down in Christchurch with our people, having a panel sort of called Beyond the Boardroom, and so they had lots of interesting things they did outside the boardroom, and it was really a chance for our people to get to know a bit more about them, sort of the most improbable things, to actually start to break down some of those things so they understand and can see what it's like to govern and know a bit about these people. They come from all different backgrounds, but also for our directors to have a really direct and deep engagement with our people as well. So I think it's always looking for ways to continue to build knowledge on the business, but it's about the relationships, really, that make the difference in all of these types of engagements and in difficult, challenging times.
I did something weird last year. I at our Christmas dinner with the board and executive of ASB Bank, I said, let's have one. I was sick of making all the speeches, you know, and everyone would get up and say something. I was like, let's do it. Let's draw a name out of the hat, and you have to say something about the person you draw out. And I said, let's call it a roast or toast. And I thought that was really fun, and I was really pleased with myself. And I went off my merry way and told the team to sort out names and hats and things. Everyone had a meltdown. They're like, what am I going to say about that board member? What if they're insulted or offended? But in the end, it was a great night. And actually, you know, if it's safe for your CFO to tell the chair of the audit committee about some funny story to do with them, then you're creating a safe environment for challenge.
It always comes down to intent, doesn't it, really?
It does. Like if you come at it with the right way. Yeah.
So if we think about people and culture and diversity being so important inside your organisations, can you talk about conscious bias, appointing, making sure that your organisation's reflecting more of New Zealand, and how you're going about that?
Yeah, look, I think that is true for every organisation, standing back and looking. So one of the things is firstly being aware, looking in the mirror, trying to understand. So first for us it started with gender. And what we needed to do there as a technology industry, it's probably not an industry that has as much participation on females as we would like. So we set out very clearly to focus on what we call the power gap. So that means in sort of board governance, senior leadership, are we seeing the people that come into the industry making their way through? So we've started to do some really great work and solve that. Now we're looking at how do we get more participation. And we also heard Tom talk about Māori and Pacifica. We know that if we think about what's going to happen in the demographics of New Zealand, that continues to grow. We've also got very low participation in technology in both Māori and Pacifica, about 5% for Māori and 4.4% for Pacifica. So we've got a very specific focus on working both with community partners, but our own programs on skilling and reskilling and looking at our environment to make sure we're attractive, not about what do other people need to do differently? How do we need to change? And it comes back again to relevance, and you think about how New Zealand is changing, Aotearoa, and what will we do differently? And so our focus has been very specific, and I'm a big believer in what gets measured gets done. So data helps you understand. The heart-led change is important. So how you think about making that, involving people from within your organisation to think about how you do create that difference is important. So I have that as part of our strategy. It's just as important as doing anything in the marketplace, and otherwise you just don't see the change that you need to. So it is about facing into the things that are uncomfortable truths potentially for organisations and thinking about what you can do about that to make it different.
Yeah, and look, I mean, diversity and inclusion, you've got to have strategies, as Jolie outlined, you've got to have strategies that go through the organisation and build pipelines and build support networks. And I'm amazed, in New Zealand would have one of the most active kind of networks for various groups, and I'm amazed at the new groups that keep emerging for different types of diversity kind of issues that need to be contemplated. But the other thing that just needs to happen at senior levels is you just need to take action. You just need to do something. And I think I'm probably a generation of women that were given opportunities ahead of their time. And that's not to say that I'm not a capable woman, I believe I am, but it'd be fair to say that there was a time when New Zealand looked itself in the mirror and went, it's not good enough, And a lot of women, we're actually the same age, Jolie and I, so I can say this. A lot of women of our age, we're quite young, aren't we? Don't we look young?
We're all about
we look so young. We're so young. Given opportunities to enter corporate governance or executive teams and things, and that's important. You just have to do it. Both the boards that I currently chair have a Māori director appointed to them, and those Māori directors are both incredibly capable people, but you have to be very specific about what you are trying to achieve and what you need. There should be Māori representation on boards, and that's just a full stop after that. So you just do it, and there are other areas we need to face into as well, and I just think you have to build the pipelines, policy structures, group support, but you actually have to do something as well, and I've taken that as a personal challenge for myself.
And I think it is about individual leaders being prepared to take risk, and I think about my own experience. I wasn't from the technology industry when I joined Telecom back in 2013. I hadn't been a publicly listed CFO, so I was coming back from Australia working in FMCG, alcoholic beverages. So when you think about potentially the risk that was taken on appointing me into that role, but that obviously then paid off with the hard work and all the things that went around that, but it does require an individual to make a decision that they will do something different. And so one of the things we've done a lot more with our people is make sure they're really clear on the impact of the decisions they're making when you are appointing, because that is the time that you can most impact change, or when you're giving opportunities for secondments or for people to step into new parts of the business or organisation, that's when you will build up the experience to enable them to be considered for more senior roles.
I've heard you, Trace, talk about your girl band. Do you want to talk about that and why that's important?
Yeah, so look, back in the day when I was... what was I doing? I was on the board of TVNZ and Joan Withers was the chair, and it was at a time when the whole kind of woman thing was getting a lot of kind of coverage, and I was getting asked to have coffee with every woman I'd met, saying, oh, I have coffee to talk about, career and life and things, and I just didn't have the time, and Joan was having the same experience, and so we were chatting in the back of a cab one day, and we said, we need to do something bigger so we can all talk to each other. And so we got this thing together, and then we invited a few other women like Jolie, and we created a group of 9 women called On Being Bold. And we now do a bunch of stuff throughout the country, which is pretty exciting actually. And I call them my girl band. So we're not like the Spice Girls. We don't sing. Can you sing? No, I didn't think so. She can dance. Are you going to dance?
But I
no,
can't sing.
Okay, all right. I had you lined up for our opening act. So we do a lot of work with Year 13 young wahine to, as they're making choices out of high school, so to provide role models and inspiration, because people often follow their whānau, and if they haven't seen anything different, that's often where they go. So trying to create other pathways. And then once a year we get 1,200 women in a room and from across the business and not-for-profit and other sectors. And we just have a really great time talking to each other, don't we? And we get internationals in. And Raylene's been on one of our panel, which I suspect is why Jolie and I are here today. But having a support crew, I think a support crew, that's one of my support crews. But you have to have people in life when you're in leadership roles that you can ring and rant at, that you can ring who have your back, who don't expect anything in return and just want things to go really well for you. And all of us need that. And I say that constantly wherever I speak. If you don't have 3 or 4 people that you can ring and rant at who will not judge you, who will have your back irrespective of what happens, then you should get that tribe. You know, in sport, I remember working in a sport which I won't name, and the CEO of that sport, I think I might have been on the board, the CEO of that sport had a really bad moment where the person they thought they trusted sort of didn't have their back, and it was a really devastating moment for that person, and I will never forget it. And you have to, if you enter into that kind of bond, you have to have that bond. And I'm really lucky to be surrounded by people like Raylene and Jolie and Anthony Crummy in the crowd and others who I can see, Sally down the back. There's so many people here from the sporting community that I've worked with in the past who have my back and I have theirs, and you've got to surround yourself with those people. Chris Moeller, who used to be the CEO of New Zealand Rugby Union, I have an 0800 line, he's retired now, but he still listens to me scream at him for an hour on an end. And at the end he said, "Have I helped you in any way?" I said, "Yeah, I knew what I was doing anyway, I just needed to get it off my chest." So, you know, surround yourself with great people.
We've talked a lot about technology and the enormous rate of change and how quickly it's happening. How can you just talk to some examples about how your organisations have dealt with either AI or tech change, or how are you taking your people with you?
Yeah, so AI, and before Gen AI and sort of OpenAI or ChatGPT came along, we decided that that was one of the core enablers that we saw and we needed to actually build skills in, but also how that it would help us and our customers to grow. So back about 4 years ago in our strategy, we put that as a key enabler. That required us to make some choices about what we were going to do with investment. How are we going to bring the skills in and attract the people? So in any kind of organisation, I guess through time you're looking at what's right for us now, what do we need for the next stage of evolution, and how do we bring and build in our organisation that muscle and ability to change, because you can't do everything. Money isn't sort of unlimited within that. And actually constraint forces, I think, helps drive innovation, because there's only so much you can do with it. So there's some really gnarly problems that you need to solve, and that constraint helps you do that. So for us, it's been a journey we've been on. We are reskilling within our org, so people who aren't data scientists don't have all of those experiences. A lot of people coming from our frontline, so they understand our customers, they've got good culture, and we're investing in them in a reskilling program, which runs for about 8 weeks, and then we've been able to place them in roles that provide pathways. So for us, it's about building the skills. I mean, we are a technology company, so we can invest and do that. But the other thing we've done is, for a number of our customers, we've offered the opportunity to go on a mini MBA around AI, because one of the things we see when we do a lot of research is people know about it, but are unsure about what to do in their organisation with it. So one of the things we're trying to look at is how do you help people make that shift. But I suppose it's about prioritising what is most important for the organisation forward, and also sharing. How do you share across, whether it's competitors offshore who will give us more insight and information about how we use it, because we're embedding it deeply within our organisation and how we engage with our customers as well.
Just remind me what the question was again, Raylene. Sorry.
AI.
AI and technology and use of it. Yes, we should all use it. So keeping in front of these things is really important, and every organisation I'm involved with, from, like Antarctica, New Zealand, down on Christchurch, really small organisation that does important work. We're trying to understand how AI and technology can affect the work we do down in Antarctica. Every organisation actually needs to embrace it. And when I think about sport, if you don't mind me putting it in a sporting context for a minute, I've been thinking a lot about it as I go to, I now don't work in sport, but I get to go to things a lot. And, I was at the Phoenix game, that really amazing Phoenix game a few weeks ago, and all the Women's World Cups that all these amazing events that we've had recently. And I'm watching the country respond in terms of broadcasting, in terms of audiences, live audiences, and it's actually getting more and more challenging, some of that. And I think about where digitisation fits into that picture, and it's kind of, I'm not saying I have an answer, but I keep contemplating it because I can't help myself because of my time in sport. And I keep thinking about how from, 5-year-olds entering a sport right through, how that journey and how that way you do things can be transformed through digitisation. Each company I'm involved with is trying to engage with their customers in a very different way using technology. And actually the possibilities are quite amazing. And I think about not only my own experience in sport, but my own daughter, who was very involved with gymnastics for most of her young life. And I think about there was no technology anywhere whatsoever to speak of. And when I think about that journey for other young people today going through gymnastics, I think, gosh, I could see how you could do this and this and this and this and this. And I'm sure it applies to every sport. But it worries me because people are only really engaging either through digital channels or through moments of nationhood. I think the Phoenix match was a moment of nationhood, and we seem to be looking for those special nationhood moments. So digital has to fill a void here somewhere to enable that. Anyway, it's just been on my mind.
And the risks associated with the AI, from your perspective, how do you, are we open-minded? Do we have to try and put a fence around it? What do you do?
Yeah, I think the harm side is real. The challenge or opportunity in front of us is, it is here, it's borderless. So you've got AI coming through and embedded in many products. So really what you've got to get ahead of the curve is, how do you think about that, whether that's bias, the ethics around it? One of the things we've put a challenge or an opportunity from a nation perspective is, how might we as a country have some few principles around it? So that helps guide. So not everybody's reinventing everything when they think about it. We have put our AI ethics on our website. You can see the principles, how we think about those things. They will continue to iterate as the technology shifts and moves, and also as your social license moves with that. So I think you need to be mindful of it, but that shouldn't be a reason not to engage. And I guess the question is, how might you work with partners or others, or how do you get a collective? Because not everyone can have the same depth of knowledge, but working across perhaps sports sectors, different organisations, could you get some centres of excellence, for want of a better word, that help you build out that more people can use and adopt, rather than everyone having to design for themselves? And I think that's one of the things in a pretty tough economic environment, and with some changes, as Therese touched on, in terms of different forms of entertainment and how people are using their time. How do you make sure that you use it as an enabler to really understand that fan base that you have and participant base, but not everyone doing it on their own?
Yeah, and look, when you work for Spark or ASB Bank, you have large technology departments and partners available to you. When you run small organisations, it's much harder. And I'm trying to push the government to set up something more broadly outside of sport. But you think about New Zealand, the backbone of New Zealand economically are small and medium organisations. And how do you get the bandwidth to even deal with any of this? And if you go there, how do you protect yourself? I mean, you will see on the front page of the paper periodically where someone's been the victim of a fraud or scam. Perhaps you've entered into a romantic relationship with somebody on the other side of the world that wasn't real, or any other thing, or someone's told you there's going to be a great investment, whatever it is. It's happening frequently, it's happening all the time. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make the paper. There's a lot of stuff where people make bad judgments along the way because they've been given information that looks real. And so it is actually fraud, scams, cyber, all of that, and AI just adds a layer of complexity to it, is so alive and real. And telcos, banking sector, we're all working to try and eliminate that. But it is right up front and centre. And I think when you're and it just leads to a whole other world of data and privacy. If you think about your organisations, you hold the data, probably quite personal data about people, their health, registrations, players, whatever. That data can't get into other people's hands unless it's meant to, and that's a critical issue as well. So data and privacy is being very linked to cyber and AI, and they all go together. So I think there's a need, maybe Raylene, to give you a job, but there is a need at a pan-government level to try and deal with these issues because they are really, really significant.
So we've heard a lot about Gen Z and the different expectations they have as being employees. One of the things is working from home. They like working from home, they like the flexibility. So how do we as leaders, continue to build culture and that human connection when you've got a large portion of your workforce working from home?
Yeah, so I think human connection is really important. We have a hybrid approach, so broadly 3 days in, 2 days out. And I say that broadly because there's a whole range of our people, so retail stores, some of our critical infrastructure, have no choice about where they need to work. So we're really talking more about those who might be in sort of head office type environments. So we focus very much on allowing a component of freedom within how you work, but then ensuring there are moments that matter, that teams are together. And ultimately, we're here to serve customers. So we need to make sure that not only the team you're in, but the teams you work alongside when you're in, you've got that ability to connect, to learn. So how do you have the water cooler conversations, for example, where you can observe things and see how things work? You start to lose those, I think, if you don't have the combination of both of those things. So that's the approach we've taken in terms of working with our people, and it's a principle. There's always exceptions to those sorts of things, but certainly we value it from a cultural perspective. It's not to say it's not impossible for people to work 5 days from home, but if you get a whole range of that, in an organisation of sort of 5,500, it becomes very difficult to lead and grow the people that we want to.
Yeah, and look, if I was to be provocative, I think most CEOs that I've talked to, both in Australia and New Zealand, would rather their workforce came to work. But it has been seen as a very valuable benefit to people to work from home. And so it's been built in. The way Jolie's described it is the way most organisations are approaching it for back office people. But you have to be really clear that we don't create a sort of a sense of isolation or unequal practice. If you work for any organisation, you've got frontline staff. Pilots cannot work from home. You'll be very pleased to know. They can't. Cabin crew can't serve you your tea and coffee from home. There are so many jobs. The cleaners can't clean from home. So there is a luxury associated with being in a corporate kind of setting that allows that to occur. I think flexible working is the word I like. The ability to build your life into your working life is a great thing, and I'm not against it. But I've said this many times, and people don't like it when I say it, but I'll say it anyway because it's what I think, and being honest is important. What I think is that my career has been fabulous. I've had a great career. I've had so many amazing opportunities. I've worked with so many amazing people. And how have I managed to have such a great career? Hopefully, A, because I slightly know what I'm doing, but B, because I have been nurtured and taught by people that I've reported to, people that have reported to me, people around me, by going into the trenches every day and getting on with the job. And it's those moments of disharmony or tension that you learn from. You observe people, you observe what they do and what they don't do, or what you should or shouldn't do as a result. And I fear there's a whole generation of people missing that, and I wonder what that does for their career. And that's just a provocation. I know people want to work from home, I get it. Yep, we'll all have flexible working practices. I wish when I had small children there was more flexibility for me. There was not. I even had a child in hospital and I still needed to take the baby into work to get my files on the way. Like, that's just how it was. So, working from home, yes, we're all doing it. Should we go too far? No. Should we have points of connection, as Jolie said? Yes. But should we be really mindful of creating career development? Yes, because I really do have a fear about it.
So one last question. I'm changing tack slightly. You both lead organisations that over time have done enormous amounts of sponsorship in sport, and that landscape is changing. So what are you looking for in a good partner, a good sponsorship? What does good look like to you and your organisations?
I think in any relationship you're looking for kind of mutual, both the values line up in terms of that, but so there's values and then there's value as well in terms of that, so it's got to make sense for both, because if it becomes too one-sided one way or the other, I don't think you have a sustainable partnership ahead. I do think the world is changing fast, and so a question or a reflection might be for how are the models changing? How are you changing the organisations, the way you're using technology, the way you think about keeping people in games, participating? How do you adapt? I mean, so that's a thing that's on my mind when I think around what's happening everywhere, and I don't think sports or recreation organisations are different, and probably as Therese talked about, one of the bigger challenges is you won't have access to all the resources, all those things, so who do you work with as well to help you do that?
Yeah, and look, I do think from my time in sport when we were going after sponsorships from various organisations, I do think it's changed. I think the key thing is to find a way into an organisation through their purpose. It's no longer I'll give you that, you give me that, I'll be on that TV screen or that billboard or in your sort of sport magazine or whatever, and you'll put my brand there and then I'll give you some money and whatever. It's kind of not like that anymore. In order to have a relationship, it has to be kind of through all of the layers of your purpose right down, and I think that's harder. It's got to be more of a partnership across the organisation and what it's trying to achieve, as opposed to just a kind of quid pro quo. And I think that's where sporting sponsorships are starting to move, and they'll ultimately change to, because organisations are starting to think of what is my purpose, what is my story, what are my values, and how do you relate to that, and how does it relate across all the layers. We want to activate more fulsomely. It's a more holistic relationship, I think. That's where we're going to find these things heading. Those are the discussions that happen in the boardrooms that I've been in, even in the last 5 years.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, ladies. Really appreciate your time and wise counsel to everybody. Jenny May, have we got any questions on the... Yeah. Please. You're both very busy women. How do you practice self-care and balance, demonstrate role models to others in your teams?
Okay, so I'll start. One of the things I've got two kids, so big kids. One's 20, one's 18. So one of the things that's really important to me is taking all leave. So you're right. When I'm there, I'm on, and we run a sort of 24/7 business, so things can happen at any point of time. So making sure that I find the time to get away and encourage that in my team as well. I think friends. We talk about the type 5, finding that. Or I talk about the type 5, it's your girl band. It's having those people around you that you can spend time with. It's nothing to do with what you do, but they've got your back. And finding the things, I like the simple things, down the beach, Coromandel, getting away and doing those things. And then family's a big thing to me, my extended family, so we do a lot with our family. So they're the ways I try and I manage those commitments like I do the other things I'm asked to do. So they weigh just as much as anything else, and until you can get to that space that you value that in that way, it's easy to sort of push those things away, which means that you then don't get the time for you or the people that are important around you. And I think the ability to fill your cup, to keep the energy up, to be able to renew each year and to be resilient means you have to focus on how you look after yourself as well.
Yeah, look, it's not a strength of mine particularly, and I find the more I take on, the more unable I am to exercise self-care. However, I do think holidays are really important. I'm about to go on holiday on Thursday. It's my first one this year, and yeah, I actually really need it. I need to go on holiday, and I will switch off to the extent, and everyone knows I'm going on holiday, so I'm telling all of you in case you get in touch with me. Everyone knows I'm going on holiday, so they'll try and protect me. I always appoint acting chairs while I'm away, that kind of thing. Just everyone knows. sort of, unless it's an emergency, I will get rung if it's an emergency, but I protect others when they are in the same situation. So I think of leave and holidays as quite important, and family things if a board member can't make it because their daughter's graduating, or whatever it is, family things and health are really important. But it'd be fair to say that I could try harder.
So question, how do you support young people to step into boards and leadership positions to provide a diverse perspective in terms of age and different perspectives, as we talked about the importance in the changing environment that is Gen Z?
Yeah, I mean, look, for boards, one of the things that you can do is have emerging directors, so future directors, and I've lent into that program, great program, through the IOD, or you can just do it yourself. I mean, you don't have to be within a particular framework. I think that's really important. And to the previous presentation, getting someone in on the boardroom to be there is fantastic. And I've watched all those people go on to bigger and better things, which is fabulous. And you also just have to be open. Sometimes a CEO will ring me and say, I'm thinking about this person to step into the executive. What do you think? Not sure, that they're young and they haven't had quite all the runway that you might have hoped for, but actually just full of potential and capability. What do you think? And I think it's those moments that are quite important to people's lives and careers. But the one thing on boards, particularly large listed boards where the Companies Act provides numerous opportunities for us to go to jail, I think that you have to be really careful as well to balance the experience and opportunities. Like, just bringing someone in at 22 to be a director of a large trading bank in New Zealand, frankly, would be a bit silly, because the responsibilities that go with them are really significant, and you have to take them seriously. So it's trying to find that balance to let people in and give them that experience, but not obviously go too far, but also be just open and willing for that to happen.
Excellent. As a male ally, what would your advice be for people like me to support our current and future wahine to be exposed to more opportunities for growth that we, as in the males, may not see?
What do you think,
Tricky
Jolie?
if you don't see it, but
Yeah,
one of the
tricky.
things I was thinking within that is how do you, when you are looking to either put someone into a position, you've got a position open, or you're thinking about maybe even a talent discussion, which might be two away, how are you giving that person an opportunity to build out the skills that might put them in that place for the next time? So I think it's a really holistic conversation around not where is somebody right now with everything you've got, but what are we doing to build out a range of people that can be considered? And that runs for multiple genders, multiple gender and or ethnicity as well. Because if we go to the same ways we've always done things, you won't get difference or change. And one of the things that I think that has set me up to be successful is I got experience, a breadth of experience before I took a vertical step. That meant that you cannot get better training than lived experience, about the tough things you have to face into, the people you can learn off. So how are you thinking about doing that for people in and around you in an organisation? And what perceived risk, because often it's a perceived risk, are you prepared to take to give someone that opportunity, which is a little bit like Teresa's conversation around a CEO ringing up about someone who may be less experienced. So as an ally, it's about thinking around each decision you are making, because the sort of standard you walk past is the standard you accept on this stuff. So if at the end of the year you get to and think, we haven't really given in, we don't have any different diversity, or we haven't given someone a go, then it only comes back to you and your teams, I guess, for the choices you make.
Yeah, I see it in two ways. One is the more diversity you have, the more diversity you will get, and that helps that problem. And the second thing is, if you don't, regardless of diversity, if you don't have people that can challenge your thinking, because each person in this room is biased. We are all biased. If you're a human, you are biased. So we all have to have people that will call out our bias. That's the reality. So you have to have people that challenge you. And one of the things I say in my boardrooms is to both the executive and the board, my expectation is that you will make me feel uncomfortable. Not in a reporting to HR kind of way, but just in a uncomfortable kind of way. Are you really sure about that? Have you thought that through? It comes back to the very first point on challenge.
Excellent. So thank you very much. I don't know if you can all join me in thanking Dame Therese and Jolie.
Thank you so much, Raylene, for facilitating that conversation this morning. That's us for this part. We're going to have a break for lunch. We're going to come back here at 1:30, just remembering that our program has been shortened for today. Rachel Taulalei won't be here after lunch. We're going to get straight into a discussion around funding, and then we will have our final keynote speaker of the conference join us, Jazz. So let's go and have some lunch. Let's have a break. Just very quickly before we do that, let's do a quick karakia for our kai. Nau mai inga hua o papa ahure warangi nui ki te kai whita ki kia ora haumi e hui e tai ki e. See you at 1:30 back here. Kia ora.